Hello and welcome to the second day at the AI Summit London. My name is Smolaks. I'm editor at AI Business, a publication dedicated to artificial intelligence, and I'm joined by Mark Watson, who's the Senior Research Director at Omdia, responsible for government activities and manufacturing. Hello, Mark.
Hey Max, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I guess my first question is, you are watching the industry, especially manufacturing. What are some of the trends in applied AI and in AI applications that you've noticed that are perhaps, particularly hot at the moment?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, just to frame it a little bit, so at Omdia we're tracking the manufacturing market. So we track a very broad range of automation hardware types. So the overall automation market is somewhere between 200 and 250 billion at the moment. It was hit pretty hard by the pandemic in 2020, so we certainly saw a drop in hardware revenue. We expect that to come back and to be a bit of a bounce back this year. But what the pandemic did do was really accelerate some of the focus of manufacturers on topics like digitalization, but also edge and AI as well. The edge compute market within automation at the moment is pretty nascent. We estimate it somewhere in the region of $500 million as of today, but we expect that to grow to maybe $4.5 billion within the next 10 years or so. So a really big opportunity, particularly around some of the hardware markets, particularly automation controllers, programmable logic controllers, distributed control systems, industrial PCs, and also machine vision. So certainly for some of the critical manufacturing applications that we cover, edge gives some advantages in terms of real-time decision making and low latency, as well as at the moment with the semiconductor costs coming down, it's also a more feasible way of introducing intelligence to the operational technology. On the other side, we also see a lot of companies still investigating the cloud. Obviously advantages there around scalability, integrating the operational and in the IT environments. And certainly we see that continuing to grow and companies continue to want to link plants together and to build bigger data sets and to have that analytical capability.
And you've mentioned hardware, so I have a follow-up question. What do you think about the new types of chips that are coming on the market? So I feel like every week there's a new startup, demoing a radically different architecture for AI at the edge. So do you think, we're seeing this kind of Cambrian explosion in types of silicon, and then there's going to be a big collapse, and some of these companies are going to consolidate, some of these companies are going to go out of business. What do you think, do you believe that, we need new types of chips for AI, especially at the edge, or do you think, the big guys are going to take care of it?
I think probably what we see at the moment is certainly the automation vendors that we're speaking to, I think they're probably really working with the larger players. Very aware that there's a broadening ecosystem of suppliers and different types of silicon coming through. And we've been working very closely in the last few months with our semiconductor team to understand the impact of the shortages that we're seeing at the moment. Yeah. We certainly see that having a pretty significant impact on certain areas of the automation market, which may very well drive companies to explore other opportunities and maybe to work with other companies they've not worked with before.
Okay, very interesting. And in terms of service provision, right, it seems like edge AI is going to be a battlefield between two groups of companies. On one side, you have traditional telecommunications providers. On the other side, you have cloud service providers who very much, and they're very much kind of gunning for the same piece of the market. So who do you think is going to win in this battle?
Another excellent question, and we're seeing this kind of convergence across our industry. As we talk about digitalization, we talk about AI and cloud and 5G, we see our traditional clients and the Siemens and Schneider Electrics of the world, who have very much been those automation hardware dominating those spaces. They're now seeing companies like Nokia and Orange and Google and AWS and Microsoft really entering the space with their technology and their platforms, to see what their play is. And they have very viable technology, and they're really looking to understand how that can be applied within a manufacturing environment, which is typically very different to the environments that they've been used to operating in. Things move very slowly in manufacturing. There's a huge installed base of legacy equipment, which can be in play for decades. So the transition to new technologies, new ways of working, does move quite slowly. I guess to give one example, we have done some recent analysis in our machine vision space where we cover a range of machine vision hardware, software and service. And certainly in that area we're seeing embedded vision, smart devices, smart cameras, smart sensors becoming more important in the market with embedded intelligence. We see those markets growing more quickly than standard types of cameras and vision equipment. But we also are seeing companies like Amazon, for example, recently announcing that they're entering that space, and we see other partnerships, acquisitions and announcements around products and technology really ramping up in that space. So that's certainly an area where we're continuing to track. And we certainly see that mix of companies in the ecosystem really starting to change over the next few years.
Okay, so a period of change then. And considering that everything is changing so quickly, if a manufacturing organization is designing their AI strategy at the moment, what would your advice be?
That's another good question, and I think there are there's a number of challenges that we see. Certainly not seeing AI as the kind of golden bullet that will fix a lot of different problems. I think not just using the technology for the sake of using technology, certainly for companies to focus on specific challenges and problems that they want to try and address using AI, getting data in order, and making sure that the data that they're feeding into models are clean and are going to be used to generate the results that are going to actually lead to good business decisions. I think at the moment we still see a lot of hardware being connected, the use of industrial Ethernet variants as well as new technologies coming through. 5G within manufacturing is still quite a long way off, and we don't see that being adopted in large numbers for a while. But we do see these technologies being used, but it's really addressing those particular problems and making sure that the devices that are feeding data, that's clean data and it's managed in a way that is going to lead to good results. I mean, one of the challenges that we do see is in the education and the personnel within manufacturing. Again, there's often a conflict of interest sometimes between the adoption of AI and does that mean that an operator or an engineer isn't required as much, because we talk about applications like preventative maintenance, asset performance management, where AI can play a really key role in reducing downtime, better scheduling of maintenance, which could potentially impact the need for an engineer. So there's also that conflict of interest and the actual knowledge and education in the industry around adapting some of this technology.
Yeah, but engineers are expensive.
Absolutely.
So that is the problem. It's just like if you can avoid sending that van down the road, then you probably should. Well, thank you. That is also like very reasonable, fantastic advice. Thank you, Mark. And I'll see you on the show floor.
Thank you, Max. Great to see you. Thanks a lot.